The DNA test that broke my father's lie. A story of betrayal, truth, and finding who you really are. My father stood across the kitchen table and said 6 words that ended our family. Get a DNA test or get out. I was 22 years old. I had just come home from college for the summer. I had a suitcase full of laundry and a heart full of excitement. I did not have any idea my life was about to be split in half. My name is Jordan Reed, and this is the story of how a DNA test did not just change my life, it exposed a 22-year-old secret my family had buried in silence. It started on a Sunday. Warm June afternoon, fans on, my mom, Carol, was making lemonade in the kitchen. My dad, Robert, was sitting at the table with a folder in front of him. That folder looked too clean, too prepared, like he had been waiting to use it. I dropped my bag by the door and walked in. He did not smile. He just slid that folder across the table like it was a verdict. "What is this?" I asked. "Something we should have done a long time ago," he said. I opened it. Inside was a brochure for a paternity testing lab and a printed appointment confirmation already scheduled for Tuesday. My mom walked in holding 2 glasses of lemonade. She saw the folder. She put both glasses down so hard the table shook. "Robert," her voice was flat, "we talked about this." "And I made a decision," he said, not looking at her. I looked between them like I was watching a tennis match I did not know had been going on for years. "Dad, why? What made you think this?" "Your eyes," he said. "You do not look like me. You never have." My eyes. I had my mom's eyes, green with a little bit of gray. I thought that was just how genetics worked. I did not know it had been keeping my father up at night for 2 decades. "You want to test me," I said slowly, "because of my eye color?" "Among other things," he said. Mom's hands were shaking. "Robert, you are going to destroy this family over a feeling." "Or I am going to find out the truth," he said. "Either way, I'm not living with doubt anymore." I did something in that moment that surprised even me. I said, "Fine." Not because I was scared, not because I thought he was right, but because some part of me thought, okay, let's put this to rest. Let's end this forever. My mom grabbed my arm in the hallway after. "Jordan," she whispered, "you do not have to do this." "I want to, Mom. I want him to see he is wrong." She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were wet, and something passed across her face that I did not understand until much later. Tuesday came. We sat in a clean, white waiting room that smelled like hand sanitizer and bad news. A technician swabbed my cheek, then my dad's. We did not speak the whole drive home. The results would come back in 5 to 7 business days. 5 to 7 days of eating dinner with a man who looked at me like I was evidence. 5 to 7 days of my mom barely sleeping. 5 to 7 days of the house feeling like a held breath. The email came on a Friday morning. Dad was the one who opened it. I watched his face from across the kitchen. He read it once, then again. Then he set his phone on the counter and walked out the back door without a single word. I picked up the phone. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Robert Reed is excluded as the biological father of Jordan Reed. The room went sideways, not because my dad had been right all along, but because of what that number meant. It meant my mother had kept a secret, not just from my father, from me. Mom was upstairs when I found her. She was sitting on the edge of the bed with her hands folded in her lap, like she had been waiting for this conversation for 22 years. I held up the phone. She looked at it, then at me. She did not try to explain it away. She just said, "Sit down, baby, please." She told me everything. Before she met Robert, she had been with someone else, a man named Thomas. They were together for 2 years, and then he left. No call, no warning, just gone. 3 weeks after Thomas disappeared, she found out she was pregnant. She was alone, scared, and 24 years old. "Then I met Robert," she said quietly, "and he was kind and steady, and he loved me." She paused, and I convinced myself that if he never knew, no one would get hurt. I sat there and felt the ground shift beneath my whole life. The man who raised me, who coached my little league team, who drove me to every science fair, who cried at my high school graduation, was not my biological father. And the man who was my biological father didn't even know I existed. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked. She wiped her eyes. "Because you were mine, you were ours, and every year that passed made the truth harder to say." "Did you ever try to find him, Thomas?" She nodded slowly. "Once, about 5 years ago. His sister told me he had cancer, that he moved back home to Tennessee." "Did you tell him about me?" She shook her head. "I didn't think it was my right." Dad, Robert, didn't come inside until dark. I found him sitting on the porch steps. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I sat down beside him. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then he said, "I wanted to be wrong." I turned to look at him. "What?" "I pushed for that test because I wanted to be wrong. I wanted the result to say 99.9%, and I wanted to go back inside and tell my mom I was sorry and we would never speak of it again." His voice broke. "But I needed to know, and now I know, and I don't know what to do with it." I thought about every memory I had with this man, teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, sitting in the hospital all night when I had appendicitis at 13, reading the same bedtime story so many times he had it memorized. DNA didn't do any of that. He did. "Dad," and I meant every letter of that word, "you raised me. That doesn't disappear because of a number." He covered his face with his hands, and for the first time in my life, I watched my father cry. 3 months later, I did something no one expected. I looked for Thomas, not because I needed a new father, but because I needed to know where I came from, and because somewhere in Tennessee there was a man who was sick and had no idea he had a kid walking around in the world. It took 2 months of careful searching, a mutual contact, a letter, then a call. I wrote the letter 4 times before I sent it. The first version was angry, the second was too cold, the third was all over the place. The fourth was short, just 3 sentences. "My name is Jordan Reed. My mother's name is Carol. I believe you may have known her about 23 years ago, and I would like to talk if you are willing." I mailed it on a Tuesday and didn't sleep well for 9 days. Then his number appeared on my phone one afternoon while I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store. I stared at it ringing. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I picked up on the 4th ring. When Thomas picked up, I said, "My name is Jordan Reed. My mother's name is Carol. I think you knew her about 23 years ago." A long silence on the other end, then a voice like gravel and quiet rivers. "Carol," he said, "I've thought about her 100 times." I said, "She had a child. I'm that child." Another silence, then, "How old are you?" 22. He exhaled like he had been holding that breath for 22 years. Oh my God. We met in person 4 weeks later, a diner halfway between his town and mine. I got there 30 minutes early. I sat in a booth by the window and watched every car that pulled into the parking lot. My coffee went cold. My leg would not stop bouncing. Then I saw him. He walked in with a cane and a Tennessee Volunteers hat and a face that was tired and kind and careful. He stopped just inside the door and scanned the room. Then his eyes landed on me, and he stopped moving. just completely stopped, like he had been walking towards something for 22 years and finally found it. He had green-gray eyes. My eyes. We sat for 3 hours. He told me he never stopped wondering about my mom, that he left because he was scared and young and stupid, that the cancer had made him think about all the things he had run from. He said, "I would have stayed if I had known." I believed him, not because it fixed anything, but because the regret in his eyes was real. My parents, Robert and Carol, are still together. That surprised a lot of people. It surprised me, too, at first. I honestly thought the result would end them. I thought the truth would walk in like a wrecking ball and take the whole house down. But people are more complicated than we give them credit for, and love built over 20